God the original mathematician? That's the topic of today's Board Game Blunt. And I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. So, you believe in God, or you believe in the idea of God, but you don't quite know what you believe about God, about what He can do, about what He does, about how He works in this universe that He Himself created. Well, since He is God of order, not chaos, really, He works through math. He works through mathematical equations. He works through the logical systems of math to create all that we can see and really all that we can't see. And before I get into more of that, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, at washingtontimes.com, where you may also subscribe to my 3 times a week newsletter. Just go to the bottom of washingtontimes.com, the webpage, and find the newsletter section. Click on it, and you'll see all the newsletters that the Washington Times offers. You can find mine, Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley. Just need your email address, and voila, you'll be signed up to receive Monday, Wednesday, and Friday right in your email box. My Bold and Blunt newsletter, it contains, let me try that again, after a 3-day weekend, it's hard to get the tongue moving again. It contains the commentaries that I write at the Washington Times, as well as my twice weekly, which is to say Tuesday and Thursday, Bold and Blunt podcasts. And you may also get Bold and Blunt wherever podcasts are available. Want to quickly mention my 2 newest books, one nonfiction, the other one a fiction title, the second in a 5-part fiction series, actually, available now. The nonfiction is called God, Given, or Bust, Defeating Marxism and Saving America with Biblical Truths. My fiction is called Hector, and it is the second in a 5-part fiction series called Chloe's People. So there's all that for you as you mull that over. Listen up, listen in to this headline, Gallup polling. It was put out July of 2024, so it's still pretty applicable. Majority still credits God for humankind, but not creationism. A new high of 24% say God not involved in human origins. A new 37% low say God created humans in present form. Well, how can you believe one and not the other? How can you believe God created humans but not the universe? How can you believe, conversely, God created the universe but not humans? It doesn't make sense. And so much of people's faith is wound up in the illogical. And really, I know atheists say that about believers, that it's completely illogical to believe in something that you can't see, smell, hear, taste, or touch. But guess what? You can. God created the universe, and the universe is filled with things that you can see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. From Gallup, I'm going to read this because it's an interesting survey to me. Americans continue to express complex views about human origins, with a majority believing God played at least some role, but also a majority believing humans evolved from less advanced forms of life. What, like a monkey, like a salamander, like a bird, like a fish, right? We've seen that fish. Out of fish sprung humans. Out of a form of life that doesn't breathe air or walk or have legs comes humans that breathe air, cannot live in water, have legs to walk about, and oh yeah, have lost the gills and the scales of the fish. It's such a weird way of thinking to me. And honestly, I used to be an atheist, so I understand the viewpoint. But when it comes to that, when it comes to the idea that from fish, from a salamander, from even a monkey, became humans. It just doesn't make sense. Anyhow, back to Gallup. Though diminished from the early 2000s, there's that 3-day weekend tongue again, the largest segment of Americans, 37%, are creationist purists, saying God created humans in their present form within the past 10,000 years. Second bullet point, 24% of U.S. adults accept the scientific theory of evolution that humans evolved from less advanced forms of life over millions of years without God's involvement. Crazy. I don't understand that. Anyhow, bullet point number 3, 1 in 3, or 34%, straddle both theories, saying humans evolved, but with God's guidance. So God sort of gently persuaded the fish to abandon their natural habitats of water and try out land. Why don't you flop on land for a while? And, if you flop hard enough, maybe you'll knock out some legs from the body, and then your lungs will change so that you can fill your lungs with air absent water and walk about. I guess that's how God guided the animals to become humans, or maybe even God guided plants to become animals to become humans. I don't know. You know what? I'll just take my truth from the Bible. It just seems not only simpler that way, but sane, right? Well, these readings, Gallup writes, have not changed significantly from Gallup's previous measurements in 2019. The percentage who believe God created humans in their present form within the last 10,000 years is the lowest in this 4-decade trend by 1 percentage point, and the share who do not believe God had any role in human evolution is the highest recorded by 2 points. Yes, onward and upward, say the atheists. They're making great strides in leading the uneducated, uninformed, maybe lazy, who don't research themselves, leading them down the path of non-belief. All right, creationist belief linked to more religious, less educated, more conservative Americans. Well, isn't that special? Because you believe in God and you believe in what the Bible teaches about creationism, about how God created the world and humans in a week's time, then you obviously are less educated and, coincidentally, more conservative than your left-leaning liberal friends. How convenient. Americans' views on human origins continue to vary sharply depending on their religious identification, how often they attend church, their political ideology, and their education level. Strict creationism. Majorities of U.S. adults who attend religious services weekly or more often identify as politically conservative and are Protestant, believe that God created human beings in their present form. Half of those who attend religious services nearly weekly or monthly also believe in creationism. Strict evolution. A majority of those who say they do not affiliate with any religion think humans evolved over millions of years without any involvement from God. Pluralities of those who attend religious services less than monthly, and political liberals also subscribe to the same strictly evolutionist belief. And finally, evolution influenced by God. Pluralities of Catholics and college graduates believe in evolution over millions of years that was guided by God. Americans' beliefs about human origins by subgroup. I don't think I'm going to get into all that. Really, let's just skip to the bottom line. Gallup writes this: as Americans have become less religious over the past 4 decades, their beliefs about the origin of humans have shifted, with fewer now saying God created human beings in their present form and more saying humans evolved without God's help from less advanced forms of life over millions of years. Honestly, I really want to understand how that logic goes, how humans just magically appeared, thinking, rationalizing, with the ability to communicate, the thumb, right, which is something that is specific to humans. How all this came from, I don't know, a grouping of cells which morphed magically again into some sort of animal or fish or perhaps vegetable, we don't know. And then how that magically morphed into a human life with all the rational capabilities, unless your name is Joe Biden, of logic and reason and all the thinking ability that no other life form has. So that means we're at the top of the chain, right? But we came from the bottom of the chain. Does that make sense? And why would all those monkeys and fish and salamanders and birds that didn't evolve choose to stay as the bottom of the chain? Why wouldn't they evolve? Why did only some but not all evolve into human life? That's another good question that I guess you're not supposed to ask because there's not a very logical answer for it. Anyhow, so depending on your belief, you may think that God created humans, but that the world, the universe was created out of disorder, absent God's help. Or you may think, as the Bible teaches, that both humans and the universe were created by God strategically with actual logical plan in a certain span of time. Or you may walk the line and choose from both sides of that equation. You believe similarly. You believe both hold true. Well, I have a guest today who he spent considerable time doing the research for this, which is really remarkable because it's not his chosen career field, but he says that God created the universe actually with a strategic design, and that strategic design was called mathematics. And this is very interesting in this day and age where we're taught in public school from an early age, not by teachers, but by everybody else in the classroom, that math has nothing to do with day-to-day living, and that why do I need to learn math? Nobody's going to ask me to solve an algebra problem once I graduate high school, which is probably true, but math, being as it is the law of the universe, is actually pretty important. And you don't need to be a mathematician to understand why. My guest today, Dr. William West. He's penned a book, Sacred Science, Understanding Divine Creation, and he's not a mathematician, but he explains how God created the universe through mathematical equations. Bill West, I want to thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. So great to have you here.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate being invited to be here.
Well, I love the topic of your new book. I love this theme. It's called Sacred Science, Understanding Divine Creation. And what you're doing is arguing that science actually proves the existence of God, not the other way around. Can you talk a little bit about your book?
I certainly can. I read some 4 or 5 years ago that the fastest growing community amongst the young call themselves nuns, N-O-N-E-S. And if it dug a little deeper, it was because they believed in science rather than classical scripture. And so I wondered what kind of science they were believing in. So I'm an oncologist. I've read science, all my life. So I took it upon myself to go see what would I find if I went to look at science today. And I was absolutely stunned. It was pretty straightforward to demonstrate 8 blueprints, I call them. They're all mathematics God is an amazing mathematician.
Yes.
But I should call them equations. But for instance, space-time requires 10 equations, so I decided to simplify it and call them blueprints. But when you look at them in their own individual right, they are pieces of super intelligent art, and they've worked together to build this amazing universe. This universe, we don't even know how large it is. We just know it's absolutely fascinating, interesting, containing at least 50 billion trillion stars, and then this precious planet on which we live. So I realized that as the young folks were looking at science, they were looking at an alternative revelation of God.
So, let's dig a little deeper into the mathematics of the universe, because math really is the law of the universe, correct?
It's correct.
So you have narrowed it down to about 8 different equations, but it interests me all the time. One of the reasons kids in school hate math and don't want to learn math is they don't see it as applying to anything outside of school. But that is so untrue.
Well, the entire universe and our Earth and us and our DNA are all mathematical phenomena. The miracle is that God was able to, the old saying from Hawking's, breathe fire into the equations and make them real. My favorite is the Higgs field. I don't know how many people in your listeners have heard of the Higgs field, but it fills the universe with Higgs bosons. And as those parts that want to become atoms swim through those Higgs bosons, they are encoded with mass. They become physical. So without the Higgs field, we wouldn't have anything physical. We'd be a shooting star universe. And I also am fascinated by how the Higgs field was discovered. Peter Higgs looked at an equation. And he said if an equation existed like this, it would explain where we got mass. And that was in 1964. And in 2012, CERN had enough energy to create a Higgs boson. So that theory was proven. And
can you spell that so listeners? Go ahead.
Higgs. Higgs. It's his name.
Okay.
He recognized it in an equation and realized that if this science talks about fields, which are areas of activity, if this field existed, if these Higgs bosons fill the universe, they would solve the mystery of where we got mass. And that's been pretty well confirmed. And one of what I call the 8 blueprints that created the universe. And the Higgs field stands mightily. And I will add, the scientists weren't wild about it because they really didn't want to need this near miraculous field. The first article that was written about it was called Beauty and the Beast. And beauty were their little particles that they thought they could see happening naturally without any help from God. But then those particles to function had to have this, what really does look like a miraculous intervention in the form of this field that encodes all the other particles with just the right amount of mass so that atoms work and we can be physical, we can have stars and planets and Earth. And I find it a really amazing story. And every time I go through it, every time I look at the blueprints, I think, oh, God is so real.
So how do your findings, how does your research and your analysis refute the viewpoint of those that say the universe and humanity all stemmed from the great Big Bang, right?
Yes.
Out of that chaos came all this order. How do you counter that?
Well, I view the Big Bang as a package, as a gift. It was not just the light. It was what was embedded within the light. And that included the Higgs field. It included space-time. It included the equivalence of energy and matter, E equals mc squared. It included all those elements that were going to work together to create this universe. And I look at them now and I see each one of them as super intelligence. Each one of them is divinely originated, and proof in their collective that God is real and we had a creator. And these things just didn't happen accidentally. They were very, very, very carefully, super intelligently planned, and they worked together to make this beautiful world.
So what else do you talk about mathematically speaking? Because I can really get passionate and geek out here a little bit. Well, I find it fascinating that people when for instance they go and build a fence. How do they know how deep the fence posts have to be dug in order to withstand certain amounts of wind and rain and things like that? And you get that from looking at, say, trees, right? Which is God's creation.
I think that's right. I'm not a mathematician, by the way, but I can appreciate that the universe is mathematical. And I love the example of DNA. We all assume DNA's been around forever. We have no idea where DNA came from, but it is an intensely mathematical object in its own right. Its encoding is unmatchable. I think it was Bill Gates that looked at DNA and said, "I don't think we could create an encoding apparatus that could match this depth that we store in DNA." And we all kind of assume DNA's always been around, but if you really look, we don't know where it came from. We don't know. Francis Crick, if you remember, Watson and Crick discovered the structure of DNA. He gave up trying to figure out where it came from, and just before he died, his assertion was it flew in from outer space. So, okay, there's the greatest mind in DNA, flying it in from space. So I tell that story just to say what a wonderful, mysterious world we live in, and who gave us these things? Who gave us DNA? Who invented DNA?
So say you're speaking to somebody who is part of that nuns culture, that they maybe believe that something created, Earth and humanity, but they think it's not a intelligent design type of thing. What is the most compelling, persuasive argument that you can offer based on science to convince those who don't believe in God?
Well, I look at each. I'm stuck on 8 blueprints that created the universe. We could go on to the codes that created life. And of course, the great mystery is consciousness. But let's just stay in the universe. Those 8 blueprints work together. I mean, they are designed to interact as a team, to build the basic elements, to ship those elements in clouds out into space, to have gravity pack those elements into tight, round, hot balls. And then my favorite is a little particle called W. And little W, his job is to go into a proton, and you've got protons were created in the first 20 minutes of the universe. And they're a collection, they've gone out to space-time and they've collected themselves. And the little W particle converts 2 protons into deuterium and tritium. Now, you may not remember the science, but deuterium and tritium are what cause nuclear fusion in the stars. That's the fuel for the stars. So I look at that and I think, that's just so beautifully planned. I don't know how that's accidental. That little W particle is just churning his way out there, waiting to do his thing. And then all of a sudden he's in this dense collection of protons. He goes to work and he makes deuterium and tritium. And that makes the stars shine.
It is so amazing that if you start looking at the science that it has to take place in our universe just for, the sun to rise and all that it's all based on order and logic. And to sort of attribute that to just some chaotic bang, it just doesn't even make logical sense.
Well, I believe in the Big Bang. We've got a lot of evidence for it. Uh, you know, just the fact that we're still accelerating. We're still expanding, I should say. We started expanding, and you could run that movie backwards. Um, Einstein wanted a constant universe. He did not like the idea of an expanding universe. So he put a cosmological constant, it's called. He put a fudge factor. So the universe would neither expand nor contract. And one of my favorite stories is he's confronted by a Catholic priest, Lemaitre. And in 1927, Lemaitre says, Professor Einstein, why did you put this fudge factor? You didn't need that. Um, and Einstein's remarks were, well, your math is correct, but your physics is abominable. But at about that time, this guy named Hubble was sitting out on the West Coast with a telescope, saying, the further away the galaxies are, the faster they're moving away from us. So he confirmed the accelerating universe, in which case Einstein had to cry uncle and say, yeah, this is the model. And he had to agree with the expanding universe. And the Catholic priest got it right. I often say that Lemaitre should have gotten the award rather than anyone else for the expanding universe.
Bill, talk a little bit about your area of expertise, because as you said, you're not a mathematician. So what is your area of expertise, and why, what got you interested in writing this book, researching it?
Well, my mother died of breast cancer when I was 21. And as you might imagine, so many cancer specialists today lost loved ones to cancer. So we stay mad at it. It's broken DNA, it's mutations, and we continue to try to identify those mutations. We have this wonderful thing we can do now called sequencing. That means, there's only 4 letters in DNA, A, C, T, and G, but there are 3 billion of those letters in every cell. And it's only natural. I mean, we replicate our DNA 2 trillion times a day. And the fact that we do it so accurately is stunning. But mistakes are made, and we do get mutations, and those mutations can lie at the heart of cancer. So we're constantly looking for those mutations, and even more importantly, we're looking for things that block the function of those mutations. And then the second big thing we do is we try to understand the immune response and how we can get our immune system to kill this cancer. And it will. A T cell will kill a cancer cell if it sees it. And the challenge is a good cancer has figured out how to give a secret handshake to the T cell and say, I'm okay, I'm supposed to be here. And so we've developed, not me, but great scientists across the world have developed drugs that break the secret handshake. And so all of a sudden the T cell goes, oh, no, you're not supposed to be here, and kills the cancer. And it's really amazing, actually, to watch immunotherapy work and watch cancers just sort of melt away as the immune system sees them. And I think that's going to be the ultimate solution to cancer, is to get them seeing better by the immune system. And that's happening all the time.
So you're an oncologist, but you moved into this research arena because you became interested in improving the science of God, or was there something specific that came about?
I was just hurt about the nuns, the NONES.
Gotcha.
And I thought, what? They're leaving the faith because they prefer the science. And then I looked at it for a while. What's over there? What are they finding? Because I really, as an oncologist, I read the cancer literature. Really hadn't disciplined myself to say, okay, what do we know about the creation of the universe? And so when I went over and looked at that, I thought, what a wonderful revelation of God. I mean, these aren't things that popped out of the sky accidentally. They're elegant pieces of, I consider them pieces of artwork that interact with each other to build this beautiful universe. And this earth is unbelievable. I mean, just I come away feeling, and I remember one time actually coming to tears, realizing, I'm encountering God. I'm seeing the reality of God. This isn't accidental stuff. And we have a creator. We have been created, and I think it's important. I hope more and more young people will get that, and that's why I wrote a book called Sacred Science.
Wow.
Because that it's sacred because it's a revelation. That science is a revelation of the reality of God.
So it was more a motivation, a service to humanity. That's amazing. And I'm fascinated by the premise of your book, and I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to get it because I just love the theme: sacred science, understanding divine creation. You're a scholarly guy. Is your book written with the layman's in view, or is it very scientific? Can anybody understand it?
I tried to write it so that anybody could understand it. It took me 3 years, and I did my very best to put in, definitions, examples. I used the metaphor of a car, driving. We're going to travel 1 million miles today. We don't know it, but Earth is going to move 1 million miles through space.
Oh, wow.
And there's just so much we don't realize is going on that's just so magnificent. But I guess I want my children, really. I'm blessed with 2 daughters and I've got 8 grandchildren, and I want them to understand more about how God created this universe. And of course, we're blessed. We're from a religious family. We've all been that way since we were kiddos. But it's probably fun to be. I wrote the book to myself, actually, to be blunt, because I wanted to try to summarize what I knew about science and how it related to God and the creation of the universe.
Wow.
And life.
Unveiling the mysteries of God's intelligent design. It's basically what it's about. And as I said, I can't wait to read it. It was such a delight speaking with you, Dr. William West. Your book title, again, is Sacred Science, and I assume you can get it anywhere, yes?
You can get it at Amazon, and I appreciate you including me in your interview. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. You have a wonderful day.
You do, too.
And that's another Bold and Blunt. Remember, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, at WashingtonTimes.com, and of course, wherever